Hey ladies, I'm Robin Riggs, your health coach, and welcome to part 2 of our GMO discussion. In the first part, we talked about what GMOs are and what their potential health implications might be. And many of you probably decided after listening and watching that you may not want to be ingesting GMOs. So if we decide that GMOs aren't for us, maybe we aren't sold on the safety, maybe we don't want to eat foods that are considered a pesticide, that explode the stomach of pests who eat them or cause them to be infertile. If we decide that we want to avoid that, we should be offered the opportunity to know if we're ingesting GMO food. It should be labeled, right? Unfortunately, in the United States, GMO foods are not required to be labeled as such. 64 countries around the world, including Australia, Japan, all of the countries in the European Union, require genetically modified foods to be labeled. And most of you are probably aware, you've probably seen the lobbying. There are huge groups and citizens in the United States that have gone to huge lengths to require GMO labeling. They've lobbied for it. Many states have tried to get it passed. In 2015, a survey found that 93% of Americans believe GMO foods should be labeled. Unfortunately, these efforts continue to get shot down because Monsanto, the largest producer of GMO foods, has board members and former executives strategically placed in the FDA and various positions in government that make these decisions. And of course, they're doing this on purpose. Monsanto realizes that if GMO foods were labeled, we would be much less likely to buy them. In the absence of mandatory labeling, the Non-GMO Project was created, and that gives consumers the informed choice that they deserve. So there are two things you can look for when you're shopping for food. The first is the organic label. If something has a certified organic label, that means that it was not produced using GMO feed or GMO practices. So when you're buying organic, you're safe from GMO. The second is a label called non-GMO, and you'll see that on your screen so that you can identify it. And now that you've seen this label, you may recognize it when you go into the grocery store. You might see it sticking out on tags, or you might see that little emblem on packages of food. And that means that they were certified to have not been grown with GMO practices. But let's also talk about the foods that are most likely to be GMO so that you can be really aware of that. First of all, packaged foods. Most packaged foods contain ingredients derived from soy, corn, canola, sugar beets, and the vast majority of those crops grown in North America are genetically modified. So if you're eating packaged food, there's a good chance that you're eating GMO, unless your packaged food has an organic or non-GMO label on it. Certain crops are really high risk of being GMO, the top being corn. Almost all of the corn produced in the United States is GMO. A couple of the other crops are alfalfa, canola, cotton, papaya, soy, sugar beets, yellow summer squash and zucchini, animal products because they're eating a lot of corn GMO feed. So most non-organic meat should be considered GMO because those animals are eating corn, grain, which is likely GMO. And unfortunately, it can be hard to find organic corn. So if you, like my family, like to eat corn on the cob in the summer, you do have to be careful where you find that. So hopefully now you have an idea of how to avoid GMO foods if you choose to do so. Also, if you see legislation being introduced trying to label GMO and you feel passionately about that, it would be great for you to support that project. One last thing that I want to talk about is the impact of GMOs on our environment. More than 80% of all GMOs grown worldwide are engineered for herbicide tolerance. And as a result of that, the use of toxic herbicides like Roundup has increased 16 times since GMOs were introduced. Genetically modified crops are also responsible for the emergence of herbicide-resistant superweeds and superbugs, which can only be killed with really toxic poisons. So you can probably tell from my stance on this that I think GMO is not for us. It's bad for the environment and certainly could be bad for our bodies since it's made to explode the stomachs of insects and cause infertility and cause tumors in rats. I think we should all be avoiding it. I think we should be aware of what it is and which foods that it's in. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. And please let me know if you've learned anything about GMOs. Are you going to try to avoid them now? As always, ladies, thanks for listening. Thanks for keeping yourselves informed. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.